encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. We're inviting the heart and life of Jesus into our lives. Welcome to another edition of Today with Jesus. My name is Robert Hatfield.
I'm Dan Winkler, and thank you for being part of our podcast today. You enrich our lives just knowing that you're on the other end of this microphone. And, you know, Robert, we are getting wonderful interaction with our viewers. They send us thoughts that are very kind and helpful to us. Yes. We're getting great questions for this series of Today with Jesus, Q&A, What Would Jesus Say? And I want to say thank you to every one of our listeners for, number one, listening. Number two, sharing our thoughts with others. Number three, telling folks about Today with Jesus. But also thank them for the questions that they're sending us. They make me think and help me grow. And I love them for helping me grow and to be more like Jesus.
Yes. And just the sense that we can share in people's lives and hopefully bless their lives in a very unique and focused way through the questions that we're answering. Means a lot too.
Some of them are questions that are doctrinally oriented. Some of them are life questions, life-changing questions. And some of them are rather, sensitive. Yes. And I guess today's is that way. And I'd like for you to read the question for us, and then we'll have some introductory thoughts and kind of walk through this very gingerly together.
Mm-hmm. Our listener has asked us this week, what would Jesus say to or about someone who is struggling with thoughts on taking their own life?
Okay. I want to say, just by means of introduction to our episode, I want to say something, or a few things, to the wonderful person that asked this question. Personally, I don't know who you are, male, female, but I would like to say these things to you, specifically to you. First of all, thank you for trusting us enough to ask us that question. Yeah. I sat back and I think about that, Robert. Here's someone that wanted us to address this very, very sensitive matter in his or her life. And I want to say thank you for trusting us. I don't know, I felt honored and even more so humbled that they would ask us. Yes. I don't feel like in the field of psychology for certain that I qualify to give an answer, but in reference to the Bible, there are some things we might consider, and both of us can look at it from that perspective. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to say thank you for trusting us enough with your heart and your life. The second thing I want to say to you, specifically to you as the person that asked this question, I want to say thank you for being so transparent and honest. There are so many people, too many people, that keep things bottled up and hypocritically live their lives in the silence of struggle until they reach a point that they make decisions that impact the rest of their life, the lives of others, or even decisions to take their life, or even the life of others. And all because they've let something just dwell within and bottle up and lived a hypocritical life in the silence of struggle. And I thank you for not being that way. I thank you for trusting us with what you have in a very transparent fashion expressed. And the third and final thing I'd like to say to you, specifically to you as the person that authored this wonderful question, thank you for wanting to do what Jesus wants you to do with your life. You did say, what would Jesus say to or about someone who's struggling with these thoughts? So thank you for wanting to do what Jesus wants you to do. Mm-hmm. All of that sums up to me, to say to me that I am speaking to a very, very special person. And I want you to know that that's how and I think that Robert would concur. That's how
Yes.
I view you, a very special person who trusted us with your question, who was very transparent and honest with the question, and wants Jesus' will to be done in your life. Thank you for being that special individual.
Mhm.
There's something else I'd like to say, Robert, about this question, but I'd like to express it to a broader audience than just this one special person that asked the question. I'd like to say some things to those of us who have had similar thoughts,
Mm.
or they know of someone that has had similar thoughts. But before I talk about these thoughts of suicide, I want to ask you, I think before our episode, you shared with me a quote, and it kind
Mhm.
of defines suicide. And I thought that is a masterful quotation. So help us all to better understand what we're talking about when we're saying thoughts of suicide.
Mhm. I opened Dr. Tim Clinton and Dr. Ron Hawkins' book, A Guide to Biblical Counseling, and they have a section in there about suicide and give a definition. So these are, to your point a minute ago, Brother Dan, neither you nor I are trained psychologists.
No.
These individuals are, and I've appreciated this work and have turned to it many times in my localized ministry. Here's what they say on page 254, quote, suicide is the tragic and lethal culmination of a psychological process that results from unresolved events that create depression and hopelessness.
Now, Robert, there was a lot in that. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to purposefully ask you, please read it one more time.
Suicide is the tragic and lethal culmination of a psychological process that results from unresolved events. They italicized that unresolved
Okay.
events that create depression and hopelessness.
Okay. I found that to be a wonderful description of the matter of discussion for this episode. And thank you for that. Here's
There's
some things.
something in my life, whether it be in my present or a part of my past,
Okay.
that I'm struggling to find a way forward through or out of. And that despair just keeps closing in. And it seems as though there is no path out of it. That's sort of the way that I've been trying. I learned this from Jesus as you and I were walking through the Gospel of Mark, the first
Oh
two
yeah.
seasons, and
Hmm.
Jesus so often would step into the shoes of another. He taught us to do that. Step in another person's shoes and then come back into your own shoes, but then treat that person based on the way that you felt when you were putting yourself
Yes.
in their place.
Yes.
And learned that from him. And he was masterful at it.
He
And
was at
this
everything.
this definition is helping me to learn to do that as well.
Okay. So, with that definition in mind, as helpful as it was, here are some thoughts that I'd like to say to all of us,
Mhm.
not just our the one that submitted the question, but to all of us, whether we have struggled with suicidal thoughts ourselves, or know of someone that has.
Mhm.
Most of us in the ministry have encountered wonderful people that struggle with life to this extent. I know I have. How
Yes.
about you, Robert?
Yes, sir. Me too.
Okay. So, um, if we know of individuals that have struggled with life to this degree, or perhaps we have as well, and I know of some preachers that have actually attempted to take their lives.
Yes.
And here are three things that I would like for us to all keep in mind, whether we're struggling with this or wanting to help someone else that is. Three things. Observation number one: life is a wonderful gift. And spell the word gift in all caps. Life is a wonderful gift from God. I remember what Paul said to the Athenians in Acts 17, verse 25 and verse 28. He said that God gives to all life and breath and all things. And then in verse 28, in him we live. So life is a gift that comes from God. I'm reminded of Psalm 127, verse 3. Excuse me just a minute. I'm sorry. Psalm 127, verse 3. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. So life is a gift from God that needs to be enjoyed. Observation number 2, for all of us that perhaps have struggled with these thoughts or know of someone that is, we need to be reminded that life is not only a gift from God, but life is grand. And spell the word grand with all caps. Life is grand if we make it so. You see, the choice is mine. The choice is yours to make life wonderful, enjoyable. I had a friend once tell me years ago, he said, I have a choice when I get up in the morning. I can choose to be happy or I can choose to be miserable. I choose to be happy. And he was chronically joyful. He was one of those wonderful people that he was just happy all the time, not in a silly way, but you just knew that the day meant something to him. It did because he made that choice. Now, I have to be honest with you, Robert. There are days that I've gotten up, and especially when times were difficult. We all go through difficult patches. And there have been times in my life when life was pretty tough. Mm-hmm. And I would wake up and I would say, I would think, ooh, me, today's going to be a tough day. And I give myself permission to have a tough day.
Yeah.
And it was a tough day. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a miserable day. I gave myself permission to be miserable. And I was miserable all day long. I don't want to be that way. It's not fun.
Yeah.
And so even when we wake up and we think, oh, today's going to be so difficult, but I'm going to be happy about it. I'm going to be happy in this day. The choice is mine. And I need to keep that particular thought in mind. I think I misquoted a passage. I said Psalm 127, verse 3 said that today's the day the Lord's made. That's not the right passage. So I back up and I correct myself. I do that all the time. And I'm happy about it. Psalm 118, verse 24 says, this is the day the Lord has made. I will. See the choice? I will rejoice and be glad in it. The psalmist said, this is the day God gave me, and I'm going to choose to be happy in this day. So life is a wonderful gift from God. Second, life is grand if we choose to make it so. And then the third observation to all of us who have struggled with these thoughts or know of someone that is, life is gone, and spell the word gone in all caps. Life is gone before you know it. James 4:14 says, what is life? We're a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. I'm 69. I can't wrap my mind around that. I truly cannot. How old are you? I'm 50. I'm not. I'm almost 70 years old. I can't believe that. What happened? A vapor that appeared for a little time. And you know, as do many of our audience, in January, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. In February, I had surgery, 1/3 of the colon removed, great surgery. And then in March, I started chemo and just finished last week. For 6 months, I've endured all the rigors of chemo. And the prognoses are wonderful and very, very positive, for which
Great.
I thank the Lord for his graciousness
Mhm.
and his care.
We do too.
But thank you. Every day I have learned is a day that I am going to treasure, not just be happy in it. I'm going to
Mm,
treasure this day. It may be my last.
mm.
It may be the beginning of my last. And that's true with you, Robert, even though you're much younger, by 2 or 3 years
A few.
and
Yeah.
a few. And it's true with all of us. Life could be
Yes.
over tomorrow or even today. So let's treasure every moment that we have.
Mhm.
Life has gone too quickly. And it's something that's grand if we make it so. And it is that way because it's a gift from God. So these are things that we all need to keep in mind relative to life. Perhaps you'd like to share some thoughts along those lines.
I was thinking, the Bible has a lot to say about these topics, and you've given us some of these. That in Him we live and move and have our
Yeah.
being,
Hmm.
and this is the day. And sometimes it can be hard to mesh those optimistic outlooks of life with the difficulties of life. And I don't know, just is right here off the cuff. I'm thinking about. I know we'll get to what Jesus said in just a moment, but I'm thinking about Paul, who was a servant of Jesus,
Hmm.
and there's nowhere that may be overstated, but perhaps a place where this meshing or this balance of the issues of life with the potential and the fusion of purpose for which God made it is on display in the book of Philippians. And
Mm. Oh, yes.
I was studying Philippians not long ago, and I was reading, and I can't attribute it right now. I don't remember from whom I read it, but it was such a blessing to me. Paul uses that word joy or rejoice or rejoicing or some, variant of that thought a bunch of times throughout Philippians.
About 16 of them.
About 16
Yeah.
times, and of course, he's imprisoned. He talks about people who are wanting to do wrong by him or silence his preaching and on and on. A lot of the difficulties there, but somebody said that joy. This isn't Paul in Philippians, but this was someone's assessment based on what Paul wrote in Philippians. They define joy like this: joy is the settled conviction that God works all things for His glory and for our good.
Ooh, I like that.
In that order, for His glory first and for our good. But joy is the settled conviction that God's glory and my good will result from whatever it is that I'm enduring. Now, I know sometimes, like you said, we get in these circumstances and it doesn't seem like there's anything else but this.
Yeah.
But the Bible does infuse us with hope, and that seems like a positive theme in this discussion, and as we consider this thought even more in this question even more.
You know, your definition that you quoted earlier talks about unresolved issues
Yes, sir.
from the past. In my experience, that is definitely something that can cause angst or depression or just a bad day. But
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, I struggle perhaps more with thinking about the future rather than the past.
Mm.
And what will this do to my tomorrows? Or what will my past
Yes.
do to
Yeah.
my tomorrows? And I'm overly concerned about tomorrow. When Jesus said, "Sufficient unto the day are the evils thereof." Don't worry about tomorrow.
Yeah.
Excuse me. My voice isn't wanting to work today. So um, I struggle with today because of what yesterday might do to tomorrow.
Hmm.
And when Jesus says today, live for today,
Yeah.
that means no tomorrow, no yesterday.
Mm.
And that means no tomorrow. You live today. And then you rejoice in the day that you have. If there are consequences from your yesterdays, work through them with God's blessings and help.
Mhm.
but don't add to the consequences and to the difficulties of today by thinking, what is all this going to lead to tomorrow? Or what am I
Right.
going to, and, we can just wither ourselves down with worry.
Yes.
So life is a gift from God. Life is grand if we make it, and life is gone too quickly. So let's really choose to be happy with the day. Those are things that we need to just, in the general, remind ourselves of
Mhm.
as individuals who may struggle with these thoughts or know someone that is. Let's get to what Jesus would say.
Mm.
What Jesus would say to or about someone who is struggling with thoughts of taking their own life. Robert, I think in our discussions prior to the episode, we kind of decided that I would kind of take the lead on this, but
Mhm.
don't let this be just something I'm saying. You step in anytime you feel comfortable, okay, or
Yes.
want to. I would like to suggest that from Jesus, we have three observations or three thoughts that might need to be considered. Okay, what would Jesus say to someone or about someone struggling with the thoughts of taking their own life? First of all, there is a declaration from Jesus that needs to be heard by all of us. The declaration comes in John chapter 10, verse 10. The thief comes that he might steal, kill, destroy. I have come. Now listen to those words. Jesus actually says, this is the reason I'm here. He left heaven. He left all the riches of heaven. He left the presence of his Father where he was sitting with God. And if I understand the Bible correctly, he stepped into an arena where he will always be man, God, God, man. And he will never be anything but that. And therefore he's not all God. He sacrificed his equality with God permanently to come here. That's incredible to think about.
Mm.
The love that Jesus had for me to make that kind of a sacrifice. I can't wrap my mind around it. He said, I came, but he said, I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. The word translated abundantly, superaddedly. I came that they could be Superman and Superwoman. I came so that they can have a life that is life indeed, as Paul would write to Timothy. I came that they might have life and have it in a way like no other person has it. When you're a Christian, you have a relationship with Jesus Christ that exponentially makes life so much more wonderful. So there's this declaration from Jesus that says, I've come so that you can live. I want you to live, but I want you to live in an abundant way.
Mm.
That needs to be remembered when I wake up and I say to myself, as I have, I think I'm going to make this a miserable day. I just don't feel like making it happy.
Mm.
Jesus said, I want you to have a life that's abundant.
Mhm.
So the declaration of Jesus in John 10 might be considered as what he would say to or about someone of our question.
Uh,
Second, you have anything to add there, Robert, before we go on?
no, just amen. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Second, there's an illustration from Jesus that might be considered. In Luke chapter 10, we have one of the Lord's stories. It's one of, if not his most familiar and beloved stories of all of his parables. Luke chapter 10, beginning in verse 25, you have the context that encapsulates the parable of the Good Samaritan, the gospel within the gospel, as it has been perhaps called by some. If you remember the parable, let's see, this man fell among thieves. You remember it, Robert?
Yes, sir. I do.
Okay. Now, he's there. The thieves leave him, and it tells us that the man fell among thieves. He was stripped by them. They stripped him, they beat him, and departed. And it says, leaving him half dead. In other words, to them, he was a dead man.
Mm.
This guy was half dead. Half dead's half alive, but it's still half dead, and you're on your way.
Yeah.
The man was struggling to live. And now, one person comes. Who's the first person that comes by this man in the story?
And we got a priest.
There's a priest. He's a very religious person. He was a mediator that helped people in their relationship with God. If you read Hebrews 5, verse 1, that's what an Old Testament priest did. He was a mediator that helped people in their relationship with God. And this priest comes to the man and he sees the man half dead. What does he do?
Walks by on the other side. He acts like he didn't see him.
Yeah, walked by.
Yeah.
He left him. He left him half dead.
Yeah.
Okay, who's the second man that comes by?
Levite.
A Levite. Now, a Levite, according to the book of Numbers, was a facilitator that helped the priest in their helping others with their relationship with God. So you have a mediator, now a facilitator, helping people relate to God. What does the Levite do?
Same thing.
Same thing. He walks by. He leaves the man half dead. Well, now, if you're half dead and you're not in good shape, odds are you're 3/4 dead. You're heading downhill.
It's not getting any better, is it?
Not getting any better. And you have a man, two religious people, and they just walk right on by and leave him half dead. Who's the third person that comes up in the story?
A Samaritan.
A Samaritan. And the Bible says in Luke 10:34, he went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And all of that follows verse 33, which says he had compassion.
Yeah.
Literally, the man was moved to feel compassion by what he saw in this half-dead man. And so he went to the effort of taking care of the half-dead man. Now go down to the last verse of the parable, Robert. Do you remember what Jesus said we are to do as a motto to this story? Go and do what?
Likewise.
You go be like the Samaritan. You help take care of people. You take care of people when they're half dead. Why would Jesus, you care for people and have compassion on people even when they're half dead? Why would Jesus teach us to do that if life is to be taken for granted and snuffed out by a selfish decision?
Right.
So that's an illustration, I think, that is really one to consider and digest. Life is worth living, and Jesus wants us to live it with him in our lives abundantly. And then life is worth living to the point that when we see one that's struggling to live, we need to try and help them continue to live. And then there's this third thought. There's a description from Jesus that might be considered. In Matthew 24, Jesus gives us his description of the day of judgment. And you remember there are two groups of people. There are the sheep. That's like me. There are the goats. That's like Robert.
I knew.
No, I didn't.
I knew it was coming. I
didn't mean it. I know. But there are the sheep, and those are the righteous folks who Jesus said, I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was naked, I was in prison, I was sick. You took care of me. When do we do that, Lord? When you took care of the least of these. The least of these are still among us. There are people that still need our attention. And when we help them, it's like we're serving Jesus, the righteous. Then there's the unrighteous, the goats. And I was hungry, thirsty, sick, naked, in prison, and a stranger, and you didn't see to my needs. Well, Lord, when will that happen? When you didn't see to the needs of the least of these, and they are the wicked, the unrighteous. Now, to the righteous, the sheep on his right, Jesus will say, Matthew 24:34, come, you blessed. Don't miss that word. You blessed of or by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Come, you who are blessed. Now drop down there, scroll down if you would on our screen to the last verse, verse 46. He talks about the sheep and the goats together, and he says, these, the goats, the unrighteous, these will go away into eternal punishment. But look what he says about the blessed, the righteous into eternal life. Robert, that's heaven. Think about with me. Let's just kind of see if on the top of our heads, we can't think of different ways heaven is described in the New Testament. What comes to your mind?
Well, now the only thing I got in my mind is eternal life. Wait give me a second here.
Well, hold that one and see if you can come up with another one. Here's one.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
No, you start. It'd be better if you start.
Heaven is described as a very special place to live. In my Father's house are many mansions. Now, some translations say in my Father's house are many rooms. So either you have a city full of glorious mansions, or you have a luxury apartment complex with a beautiful apartment that's gorgeously designed just for you. And that's how heaven's described, a very special place to live. Yeah. Why is heaven heaven?
Because God's there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's just another thought to remember.
Yeah.
Heaven is so special because of who is there.
Yes.
God is there and Jesus is there. Here's another description of this place where God is and where Jesus is. It's an inheritance. An inheritance prepared for you in heaven. Peter would say in 2 Peter chapter 1. It's described as a new heaven and a new earth. I know there's a lot of discussion in religious world and in Christendom in general about whether heaven is going to be a renovated earth or not. Yeah. And I think we're missing the point when we try to make it that way. Not to disparage folks that would be leaning in this direction or that in that discussion, but just to say heaven is described in a multitude of descriptive, figurative ways. And in my estimation, this is just it's like all the beauty of heaven and earth that you see around you magnified tenfold. It's something brand spanking new, like never before experienced earth and heaven. That's the meaning of the word translated new there. And so that's just another spiritual, rather figurative description of heaven. It's a special place. It's a new heaven, new earth. It's an inheritance. On and on we could go. But for our thoughts, heaven is described as eternal. How did you say that?
Life.
Eternal life. If life is not special, if life is just something to disregard and snuff away at leisure or even after struggles, if life is not that special, why would Jesus use it as another figurative description of heaven where he and God live? So this declaration from Jesus, this illustration from Jesus, and this description from Jesus, a description of heaven, all are thoughts that Jesus say relative to life. And I can't help but wonder if he wouldn't take from those passages thoughts to share with someone struggling, per our question, to share with that person the wonder, the true wonder of life itself. Life is incredible. And to the person that has written this question, Thank you for trusting us to answer the question. Thank you for being so transparent. And thank you for wanting to do what Jesus wants you to do. And this is what Jesus wants you to do. It's what he wants me to do and all of us. He wants us to accept the gift of life, to make the choice to rejoice in every single day that God gives us, and know that the day will come when God will choose for our days to come to an end and for us to come to him. I think that's the essence of what Jesus would say per our three observations here. Your
I
thoughts?
appreciate what you said. I appreciate all that you said, but at the beginning, that you were praising our listener who asked the question about their honesty and vulnerability, and that's important. It seems to me that there's no reason for us to live in this, as you said, hypocrisy, where we're pretending that everything's fine when it's not, and even within the context of the Lord's church.
Oh, yes.
This is not this is not an issue of you need more faith, or you ought to, why don't you have enough faith? Why don't you trust the Bible more? Why don't you pray enough? Certainly saturate your thoughts with prayer, and go to Scripture. And Brother Dan's given us a lot of wonderful passages to consider and to help us reignite the passion for life itself and how wonderful life is and what God intends for it to be. But
Robert,
also by all means, open up to somebody.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When it comes to thoughts like this, if indeed they are stemming from, as your definition of suicide suggested, feelings of depression, we need to remember that there are two basic kinds of depression. There is clinical depression, where there is a chemical imbalance in our bodies that's causing us to feel this way and think this way. That is a very, very real anomaly.
Yes.
And we don't need to make light of that. Oh, just, pull yourself together. No. Right. A person that is chemically imbalanced, that doesn't speak ill of them. I mean, I had cancer. That doesn't speak ill of me.
Right.
I had a biological problem that was addressed. And there are people, now I hear somebody out there that's edging my yard instead of mowing it like earlier. And again, I'm thinking, glad it's you, buddy, and not me.
And for our listeners, that's like it's the last 2 weeks now that your yard has been being worked on.
Mowed and edged.
That's
yes.
Right. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
But anyway,
I agree with you on that, and it's just as real, like you say, as cancer. Or
yes.
I have a B12 deficiency. My body does not naturally produce B12.
I knew there was something wrong with you.
You knew that way. And now it's all explained. I get an injection every 3 weeks that my wife gives to me, by the way. She plays target practice with me. It's very therapeutic for her part of our marriage. But, on the outside, sometimes I've wondered, I thought this can't seem real. This can't be real. It's not like I broke something. It's, it's not like there's some physical problem that's visible to the eye that's going on. In fact, it manifested itself in a variety of ways earlier. Several years ago, I thought I was having a heart attack, and it turned out to be B12. Apply the same general thoughts to the mind.
Yes.
And first of all, how complex our minds are. And you're right. If there is whether it's a chemical imbalance or whatever it is valid. Whether I can personally understand it, even if I'm the person going through it,
yes,
whether I can personally understand it or not, it's valid, and that ought to be validated, and even from a biblical perspective.
We don't need to be condescending. Now, we don't need to condescend to those that are struggling with chemical depression, nor do we need to be condescending to ourselves.
Right.
And deny the fact that we have a problem.
Yes.
If indeed I am struggling with depression, I need to see my doctor. And if he determines that I have a chemical imbalance, he'll put me on pharmaceuticals that can help. There's help. Thank God there's help for individuals struggling with chemical depression. Now, there's another kind of depression, and that's relative to character as well as, and this is where, just as a person, we're not chemically imbalanced, but we're just struggling with life itself. And we just can't seem to make the choice to be happy. We are more, we feel like we're more suitable to be miserable people and make everybody miserable around us. And there's help for us if we are finding ourselves in that camp. And that's where we sit down and talk to counselors. They go to school for years, and they have decades of experience in helping people reinvest in the joys of life.
Yes.
And so again, we need to seek help and help is available. So I found at the end of our discussion here, it necessary to keep us abreast of the fact there are two basic kinds of depression. There may be more that I'm not alerted to, but these two basic kinds, and none of us need to be condescending to people who struggle this way, or condescending to ourselves if we struggle this way. That we just need to get some help and try to make every day the wonderful day that God made for it to be, and experience the wonder of life.
Yeah. Good thoughts.
Yeah.
We are so appreciative of this question and of the other questions we've received. They mean so much to us. We want to continue to hear from you. You can go to our website, thelightnetwork.tv/TWJ, where you'll find not only episode archives, links where you can subscribe, the video versions as well as the audio versions. It's all available there. But at the bottom of that page is the area where you can send a message to us. And we would encourage you to do that. That comes directly to us, and we will, as appropriate, as needed, respond privately and also publicly as we can. If you enjoyed the podcast, subscribe to us in your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, so you never miss an episode. And Brother Dan mentioned this a minute ago, or at the top of the podcast, but share this with other people as well, people that you think would benefit from either this specific episode or any of the ones that we've done in the past. All of them are archived on our website, thelightnetwork.tv. Brand new episodes of Today with Jesus release on Tuesdays from that website and those platforms, podcast apps, and on YouTube. And we would just be honored if you would continue as you are to invite us and the life of Jesus, of course, into your life as we contemplate that every Tuesday on this podcast. And always look forward to getting to spend time with you, our listeners and viewers. And it's a pleasure to spend time with you too, Brother Dan. I enjoy it.
You too. I love you, buddy. And I so enjoy being with you every week through this and with our listeners. And I know we received one comment from a listener thanking us for giving so much attention to Jesus. And I just took such heart in that, because that's what we're trying to do. It's not what I say or who I am, who you say, what you say or who you are. It's all about Jesus. And I'm thankful that that particular listener saw that that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, until next time, thanks for being with us today. May you live today and every day with Jesus in your heart.
God bless. Goodbye, everybody.